that was I had no direction. Um, Even thinking about it now, if you would have asked me then, 2009, what are your plans? I probably would have said to get drunk, um, or high. I had no motivation to do anything. With that being said, the party came to a crazy end. Um, my uncle and I had gotten into it over some money. One of his friends had given me $10. And I still don't know to this day if he was just being an asshole because he was coming down. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. For whatever reason, he was under the assumption that I stole this $10 from this lady, even after her telling him that she'd given it to me. And it's $10. Um, I remember waking up that morning and he's on the phone and he's talking about me, but he's using words like motherfucker and son of a bitch, and he's talking about me like I'm not his nephew, like I'm just another person. And I reacted with anger, you know. I told him I was going to kick his ass, and he hands me the phone, and my mom's telling me to leave, and she's telling me to go to this address. And the only reason I knew where this address was in Denver, Colorado, was because when we would walk my uncle's dog, we would take different routes because he was dodging somebody he owed money to. And I had just so happened to remember where this street was, and I knew how to get to this house. If anybody's been to the Rocky Mountains, you know that they get snow at very odd times. That whole week it was nice weather, and then that morning it was a blizzard. So I'm walking through blizzard conditions with a bag of luggage and a backpack, and I find this address, and it happens to be friends of my uncle who I had met previously years ago, that weren't in contact with him anymore because of his addiction. And they took me in and they fed me, and they even bought me new toiletries. And for a couple days, they didn't tell him where I was. And they got me back on the Greyhound and gave me like $80 in cash to travel with. And that experience was traumatic enough that by the time I got to that house, I really wasn't thinking about getting wasted. I was just happy to be away from my uncle, off the streets, and I was able to relax. I was very grateful for them. And so yeah, I caught the Greyhound the rest of the way, sober again. Something about that long drive I felt like was more therapeutic if I didn't have to sneak booze onto the bus. Because if I got kicked off in the middle of Oklahoma, it'd be an issue. So I get to Ohio, and the very first night I'm there, my sisters go out and buy booze, and we drink, and we drink. I get to meet my nephew for the first time, and I get to see my sisters for the first time, and it really reminded me of how much I missed them when my mom made me go live with my dad when I was 15. Because that was a certain feeling that I had too. It took a lot of adjustment to get used to not seeing your siblings when you see them every single day. But it was a period of my life that I had forgotten about. It was a good reunion. And I mellowed out. I was drinking the whole time I was in Ohio, but I wasn't doing any hard drugs. And the fact that I couldn't find any was relaxing. I didn't know where to go to seek, and quite frankly, I fit in good with my family. I didn't feel like I needed to do anything extra because I didn't feel bad about myself. About 6 months go by, and I decided to go back to Las Vegas. And I remember how crushed my mom was because of my self-centeredness. I figured everybody thought I was going to go back to Las Vegas. I thought everybody knew that this was just an extended vacation at everyone else's expense. And but like any loyal parent, my mom paid for my Greyhound ticket and put me back on the bus. And this is September 2009. By this time, I was still with Adrian at the time. She had her own apartment. And when I got back to Vegas, I had a different head on my shoulders. I was motivated to find a job, to start being an earner. Something had happened in between seeing my uncle and spending 6 months with my sisters and my mom that really changed my thinking, and I wanted to be on the same level as Adrian. So I went out and I found a job, and I started working. I got back September 9th. I started working September 13th. Now where I started working was a section of Las Vegas they called the Bottom. This is a part of Las Vegas they don't show in the movies. Very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very poor, very ghetto. You know, you would never guess just 2 miles from this little mini mart was the glitz and glamour of the Strip. And on a daily basis, I saw people that clearly needed help, whether it was with disabilities or, let's put it like this, I wouldn't want to see anybody's grandmother in the state that I've seen some of these people in. It kind of made me feel like there was a population of people out there that felt the way I did 3 years prior to this, as far as being an outsider and just wanting to drink my emotions away. So there was still some drinking and a little partying, but it was not the main focus of things. The end of September, I went to work, and by the end of that day, I was extremely sick. I had cracked ribs from coughing. We ended up calling the ambulance. I think my heart rate was like 220, and I was only getting 60% oxygen in my blood. I was almost dead in the ambulance. I get to the hospital, they do a blood test, and they put me in quarantine because I had tested positive for H1N1, swine flu. And if any of you guys remember, in 2009, this is when people were dying from it. And this is before they had a vaccine. At this point in my life, my addictive personality had manifested itself in a different way. Because once they told me I was going to be in quarantine, and that I would not leave the hospital, I thought it was a good idea to tell them that I was in extreme back pain and see what they would do about it. And they put me on Dilaudid drips. This is the first time I had done a drug intravenously. And even to this day, I still accuse my mom, or I joke with my mom about not calling me in the hospital. And she did. I just don't remember. And maybe it was the environment that I was in. Um, it wasn't like the first time they injected me with it. It wasn't like I need to find this as soon as I get out. It was a different level. It was a level like I need to ring this bell every 5 hours to make sure they're here giving it to me. And then I need to make sure the doctor gives me a script of Vicodin to leave too. That's how my addiction had manifested itself. In a matter of a hospital visit, I started doing painkillers. So I get out of the hospital and I meet this guy that lives across the street from the mini mart that I work at. And he's the plug. This is a point in my life when I got introduced to opiates. Back in these days, they had these things called 80s. And for 2 hot dogs and a pack of Newports, I could get 3 of them. I didn't know places like, there were some places where people were giving an arm and a leg. And you also have to remember, this is 2009, before this epidemic really transformed into what it's become. You can go to the ER with withdrawal symptoms, and they'll give you a shot of morphine and a script of Flexerol and tell you to be on your way. I remember being in that situation and thinking these doctors don't know what they're doing. But I've been puking blood for 36 hours and this is going to make me feel better. Nowadays, they would lock all the addicts underneath the hospital if they could. But back then, nobody knew what was on the verge of happening, myself included. But I indulged. I worked, and my addiction had evolved into something else. I still managed to stay drunk, but I found something better than cocaine. And there was no chance of it being good from this guy and bad from this guy. It was a government-made substance that did the same exact thing every time. And I grew attached to it. And my ex-girlfriend at the time, being the road dog that she was, grew attached to them also. She always had a level of control. She wasn't the one to empty out the bank account. Not at this point in time. To get drugs. But I would make sure I spent my money on it. This is around the time I started getting sick from not doing it. And with coke or meth or you might have some kind of withdrawal symptoms when you stop. The first time I went without doing a pill every day, I got extremely sick. And I got so sick I called the ambulance on myself. You know how sick you got to be to do that. And like I said, they gave me a shot of morphine, and they sent me on my way with a prescription of muscle relaxers. And even at that point in my life, I told myself, it was more of a question, what am I going to do when I see that guy? What am I going to do when he comes into the store again? I never thought about getting a job anywhere else. I just didn't think that hard about it. So after essentially kicking my pill habit, this guy comes back into the store a week later, and I couldn't control myself. I offered him a couple hot dogs and a pack of smokes, and it was on. This time he started asking for gold, and my ex at the time had a lot of gold. She wore necklaces and she wore rings and toe rings, and so I used that my self-centeredness started to manifest itself in different ways also, because I was making my own money at this time, and I was catering to certain things that he wanted at the expense of somebody I loved, and I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. It was just a way of life. And my behavior started changing. I started doing shifty things. I started manipulating the money at work so that overages wouldn't be added to paperwork, so that I could keep those for myself. I think that's why my addiction is, I think everybody's their own addict, but certain personality types determine how much of an addict somebody is. And the fact that I've always felt like I've had one up. I've always had the knowledge of knowing I can get away with something before somebody else did it. And because of me doing it, they're going to have a new rule for people like me in the future. I had the wherewithal, and I think that's a deadly combination for an addict to have. If you know where you are, you know how much power you have. Anybody in an addict's mind is going to use that to their advantage. And this is the first time in my life when I really started doing that. Once again, not worried about anyone else around me. So there came a point in time where essentially I was caught stealing from this store. I had paid for one product and put another product in the bag. And now when I think about it, it was a blessing in disguise, because that's what I was fired for, as opposed to all the other shifty things I did. But what it did, it was relocated me so I wasn't 10 feet away from my plug anymore, which made me obsess. Instead of going to work and knowing I was going to run into this guy, now I had to catch a bus all the way to the other side of town. And I had to fill in my girlfriend to what I was doing too, because I wasn't just spending time at work anymore. I was going out of my way to go to the shittiest part of Las Vegas. And because I was self-centered and I wanted all the things for myself, I would lie to her, forgetting that she'd been with me the whole time, and she knows that I was full of shit. And also at this point in time, I had managed to get a job at Walmart. I manipulated that drug test, and I had, once again in my life, had a good opportunity with a job. And in short, I squandered it. I took $40 out of the till, multi-billion-dollar company, and I thought that they wouldn't catch me. Of course they caught me. And the only thing that saved me is that I admitted to it when they asked. Because I was honest, they walked me out of the store, deducted the $40 from my last check, and then 86 me from the premises. I was also redlined. I cannot work at any Walmart on the face of earth for the rest of my life, because I was fired for embezzlement. But that was the first time I realized what honesty could do. At that time, it was malicious, though. I would be honest for wrong reasons. I'm going to tell this cop I have this stash on me, not for the good of it, but so that he lets me go away. And it seemed to work. At that point in time, I just thought I was the luckiest guy in the world. Now, I see what kind of toll it took on me, because the guilt adds up and it festers. And even though I'm involved in different things at this point in my life, I'm working and I'm paying bills, I'm still self-centered, and I'm still stuffing my emotions. And my addiction is evolving into something else, is morphing into something else. So for a second time, I come back to Ohio to clean up. Of course, because I knew my girlfriend would wait for me, and I knew that my family would cater to me. You know, I never asked anybody if they needed help. I never offered to get a job when I would come back to Ohio and stay for fucking 6 months. And it's sad to admit, the thought never crossed my mind. I was just ready for everybody to cater to me. And so I go back to Las Vegas. Now, this time the year is 2010. I go back to Vegas, and this time is different. Now, in 2009, when I went back, I was motivated to find work and show Adrian that I could be the guy that she deserves. This time when I went back with a vengeance. I went back because I missed pills. I went back because I missed the party. And as a matter of fact, I got off the Greyhound downtown Vegas and went straight to the bottom, and got my fix right off the bat. I had you know, even though, you know, things didn't work out, of course, between me and Adrian, but she put up with a lot from me. And that's something I think about now, too, in recovery. Realistically, I've never had to deal with somebody like me. And I don't know how I would deal with that. If I love somebody that did the kind of shit that I did when I was out and about. It really gives you a sense of humility and humiliation too, because I mean, at this point in my life, I don't ever want to be remembered for those kinds of things. I'm sure we can all agree on that. So I get a job at Circle K this time, and from day one, I'm late to work. I'm missing meetings, mandatory meetings. At this point in my life, my whole existence is about pills. And I started doing a little meth too, doing cocktails, Xannies, and I get goosebumps when I talk about it now, because I like where I am now. I like my life, and there were times that there were times that I pushed my body to the limit, and for some reason it just wasn't enough. It just makes me wonder. But anyway, I get fired from this job for stealing product. I found somebody else, another plug that liked cigarettes and whatever. And I think that was another thing too, is I found ways of getting the drugs that I needed without using cash. Which was really pointless, because even the cash that I did have would go towards that too. Like I said, this time was a concoction of things. I was adding different things to the mix. So I come back to Ohio. Now, I was so strung out on pills for this Greyhound ride. I wasn't sober for the ride. And the pills that I had ran out because we had an unexpected 12-hour layover in St. Louis. So I started getting dope sick in the middle of the country. And when I say dope sick, I mean dope sick. Like, I came very close to pooping myself a couple times. I vomited on the Greyhound bus and didn't tell anybody. So people in front of me that were getting up were slipping and falling. It was just disgusting. It was disgusting. I was a fucking bum. I was a bum. I was a glorified bum. I was a bum that had people that could pay for his Greyhound tickets, or they could keep clothes on his back. I would say full circle, but it wasn't full circle, because my addiction had manifested into something else. This wasn't the same stuff I was going through the last time around. It was uglier, it was darker. But with that being said, that was the most important time I came back to Ohio because I really cleaned up. I laid on the floor in my nephew's bedroom for 3 weeks. It took me 3 weeks, and this sounds insane to say, but I gauged how sick I was based on how much liquor I could keep down. If I could drink a beer without puking it up, then I guess I'm not dope sick anymore. And it took 3 weeks for that to happen. With that being said, as soon as I was able to drink again, I started drinking. And this particular summer, my sister and I fought alcohol rage, fist fights, and rumbles. I had my eye socket broken. I got beat out of my shoes in a bar. I got my ass kicked so bad in a bar I left with one shoe. Never found the other shoe either. You know, rage, you know, that was cool. I just didn't give a fuck. I just didn't care. In the meantime, I'd gotten a letter from Clark County. Las Vegas is in Clark County. I got a letter from Clark County Job and Family Services saying that they were making attempts to garnish my wages for child support for Layla. So I got in touch with them and I said, I'm not on the birth certificate and you can't garnish my wages. And I'll never forget it. The social worker I talked to laughed at me and said that I had nothing to worry about because Samantha's mom had been dodging them the whole time too. So that was, in some weird way, it was almost like a reassurance. Like, if she's not acting like somebody that knows something that I don't, then I don't know what she's doing, you know. But it was almost reassuring as far as letting things evolve the way they will, because if she doesn't know who Layla's dad is, then maybe it's a good thing that I was out of the picture when I was, because she had no motivation to find out. And I would hate to find out something bad after we had grown so attached to each other. But then again, that, you know, that's just a justification to party on. So I made a decision to go back to Las Vegas. This is 2011, September 2011. Only thing is, my mother and my sister agreed to rent a car and drive me back to Vegas. All right, let's make a cool, fun road trip out of it. I drank the whole way, even though my mother didn't want me to, and she was very uncomfortable. I drank the whole way. I just think about, like, if my kid acted like that after I told him not to do something, you know. But we'll get to that. So I go back to Vegas, and I start having meltdowns when I drink. People say that I would have a 1,000-yard stare. And me and Adrian's fights were getting worse. And I think there was a mutual frustration. You know, we really loved each other. But being with somebody for 6 years and not even having a pregnancy scare, on top of the things that I put her through, can really bring up some resentments. You know, and when you start blaming each other on whose fault it is why you can't get pregnant, then I feel like the relationship's too far, because you start throwing daggers. And that's just what our relationship was. Instead of us hanging out, it was me doing meth all the time. Another way my addiction had manifested itself, because I wasn't drinking as much and I wasn't doing pills, but I was doing meth, another substance. And it's weird too, now I think about it, different drugs affected me at different points in my life. Maybe that's why I attached myself to them. The overall picture is that I'm an addict, and whatever's available, I will do. Um, but that still wasn't in my thick skull yet at this time. Um, there were two things that happened different with this time in Vegas. One, I knew that the amount of drugs I was doing was too much, and I made a decision to stop. And two, when I came back to Ohio, I wasn't coming back. So June 6th, 2012, I got on the Greyhound for the last time. I packed up a suitcase, and I packed up as much belongings, most important belongings, into a tote and had it shipped out here. And these are belongings like my high school diploma, a self-portrait that I did my senior year, a sketch of a city that I've done my senior year, and miscellaneous clothes that I liked. Everything else I left with Adrian. One thing did happen that was really weird, and this is why the universe is special. The universe is special. I'm not really big on religion, but we cannot deny the universe. About a week before I caught that Greyhound for the last time, I went out onto my patio, I looked down, and I saw a cardboard box. And I didn't pay no mind to it. I went back inside. 20 minutes later, my phone rings, and it's my neighbor downstairs. He says, "Yo, this is a safe." I said, "A safe?" Like, it was a Century 1254. Because I Googled how to crack it. I couldn't crack it though. So I took it to my brother's house, and the weird thing is, that day, we kept seeing unfamiliar faces around our apartment complex. Somebody dropped his safe there, and by some stroke of luck, we happened to grab it before anyone saw us. And we got to my brother's house, crowbarred it open, and there was $2,000 in cash, 2 pistols, and a pound of weed. And that was another, I suppose that's when I really started looking at the signs that the universe gives us. Every now and then, the universe will let us know that we're where we need to be. And I felt like that was my going away present. As a youngster, I aspired to really be a scumbag. The only justification I really had, though, is I stole from people that didn't deserve the things they had, that I thought, I stole. Pick out old people and rob their houses. That's not how we did it. That's another story for another day. But I looked at that like this is a gift. So I let Adrian keep a pistol and the weed. And I had a little cash, and I spent it all on meth before I jumped on that bus. But I got sober on the bus. And I got back to Ohio. And the thought of not going back to Vegas again really solidified me moving on in my life, because not only did I not want to go back to Vegas, I still haven't had a desire to go back. There was nothing there for me, and I think about how I felt when I was there, and Vegas is not a place to live when you're in that state of mind. Anyway, I get a job at Arby's here in Marion, and I work my way into management. I took this job serious based on all the experience I'd been through with other jobs, and I was truly clean. I was drinking, but I wasn't doing hard drugs, not a pill. I didn't smoke weed. I didn't do anything. I drank. Now, that's not a justification, but I was not sober, but I was clean. In the meantime, I'd had a couple couple girlfriends. I found myself getting introduced to society on a different platform, as opposed to being an outsider that just wanted to get high and manipulate people. I was actually building real relationships, and I was gaining respect from my peers. I met this one girl, and we had a connection, and we started dating, and we're from two different sides of the world. I mean, and there's an age difference too. I mean, she was 18, I was like 24 or something. She was 18. But she's born and raised in Marion, Ohio. She went to the same school from kindergarten to senior year. There were things in my life story that she was fascinated with, but it was pure fascination. I guess, to put it in words, I knew her story, but she did not know mine. But one thing was true. I had made a determination to change my life before I met her. Only thing is, I never addressed my addiction. The program that I am in teaches us that abstaining from drugs is not recovery. I didn't know that. See, I had simply stopped doing drugs. I didn't do anything to stay off of them. In the meantime, I fall in love with this girl. I take that back. We start dating, and we find out she's pregnant 2 months after starting to date. And two things went through my mind. A, this was my second chance to be a father, and the universe waited for me until I was ready to take that on. I still believe that. And two, I was going to have to learn how to love this girl. We had just been given a big responsibility, and we're going to have to learn how to do it together, because at this point in time, we don't know each other. But I was ready to take it on. I was healthy. I never had a baby with the girl I was with in Las Vegas, and now I feel like it's because we were too toxic. Because as soon as I was healthy enough to, I did. And I also remember feeling like I'm tired of living for myself. I'm tired of. I want a kid, you know. So right after that, I get promoted into management, and we get a place, and we paint my son's room, and we do all these fun things like a real family. And I don't want to say like a real family. We were a real family. We were on the same page, except for a stroke of luck. I was in a situation where there were pills, and I decided to do one for old time's sake. And just like that, I started doing more. Yeah, mushroom cloud. This time was different, because not only was I functioning, I was making a true effort to be the best man and father I could be, while battling, well, I wasn't battling, while dealing with this drug addiction. Recovery had never crossed my mind. So once again, I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was determined to do it, because this time I had my son that was relying on me. And I genuinely enjoy being a father. I really do. I love it. You know, we live in a society where, you know, guys that take care of their kids always get an extra acclamation, or an extra little bit of respect. And it's really sad, because I'm not doing anything special. I'm just a guy that likes taking care of his kids. But I was battling a drug addiction. And things I started to learn in my life that were mind-boggling. And one of those things was my drug addiction would have still went in that direction whether or not I was in the situation I was in. And I don't know if that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is how I came full circle and ended up being in a situation where there was pills and I didn't hesitate to do them and they overran my life again. That would have happened again, whether I had a girl and a baby or not, which means that my whole mind was being controlled by something. At this point in time, I'm starting to understand that a little bit. I get a sinus infection, and my son's 2 months old at the time. And at this point, I didn't have enough money for pills, so I bought some of Marianne's Economy. But I couldn't snort it because I had a sinus infection based on how much I had snorted. So I took it upon myself to take it to the next level. Now, I want to say this for the record. My DLC, my drug of choice, is cocaine. Heroin became a maintenance drug. I had to do it so that I wouldn't get sick. And I always attribute that to the first shot that I took. It was a familiar feeling. Had it been something totally new and fresh, I don't know where it would have taken me. But it reminded me of when I was in the hospital and they gave me that Dilaudid. It was a familiar feeling. And I want to overemphasize that because I think when addicts fall in love with drugs, it's a feeling they've never felt before. And I think that's why I don't know. It affected me differently, and my addiction had started to progress at the same time my son had started to progress. I'm the kind of dad, I just like to sit back and watch my kid. Not say anything, not even really interact with them, you know, just sometimes I just like to watch them, study them. And I wasn't able to do that anymore because I was nodding out. And you know, I don't think people talk about it enough. Heroin addiction is very messy. You know, there were many times my ex, who's not an addict, would go into the bathroom and there's squirts of blood everywhere, and my arms are bruised, and these are things we go through that we learn that we don't talk about, you know what I'm saying? And we don't even think about it, you know what I'm saying? That's true addiction when you measure risk versus reward, and it's worth the risk. Then again, I was still learning that. I knew that I couldn't be as good a dad as I wanted to be and be a drug addict. But I didn't know what to do about it. So I did what Adrian always does and stuffed my feelings. Now, my son's name is Isaac. Isaac's mom, not only is she born and raised in Marion, she's never been with anybody like me, let alone somebody that came with the baggage that I came with. Like I said earlier, I could only imagine if I had to deal with somebody like me. I'm very fortunate that she kept it together, because she did keep it together while I was dope sick, or I mean, she could see my struggle. I wasn't willing to give up my family. But if she had decided to leave, I wouldn't have been able to stop her. And I'm glad that she didn't decide to leave. It's one of those situations. Those out there that understand, understand. I start talking around, and I get into a Suboxone group. And at this point in time, there's a waiting list, and you have to go every week. And I started learning different things like what Suboxone and Subutex were, because even though I was addicted to opiate pills years previous, I never took Suboxone or Subutex. I never took a drug maintenance drug. But heroin is a different beast altogether, and those things helped me. They're absolutely deadly without recovery. In fact, if you're using them without recovery, there's really no point in it, because the overall objective is to get off. But anyway, I was clean for 47 days, and I was buying them off the streets, and I was almost able to see the doctor to get my own script, and I thought it'd be a good idea to get high before work. My son's 9 months old at the time, and he's in the car with me. I orchestrate a drug deal with a guy I'd never dealt with before, and by some stroke of luck, this guy meets me outside because I told him I'm not taking my son in the house. See, little things like that, I call myself a good dad because I'm not taking my son in the drug house. But he's still in the back seat while I have to go and get it, you know. That particular day, I was meeting Isaac's mom's mom at my house to pick him up so I can go to work. And like I said, I went out to get a shot before work. Hadn't used in 47 days. And I got 2 bags. I thought it was a good idea. So I meet her at the house, and she's about to leave after she gets Isaac. And she's a nurse. And for some reason, I tell her to wait. Just wait a second. And I go upstairs, and I do both of them. Boom. And next thing I remember is waking up in my hallway surrounded by paramedics and police officers. I had overdosed, and her mom knew just enough medically to keep me alive until the paramedics got there. If she wouldn't have been there, my son would have stayed downstairs probably for 8 hours by himself until his mom got home to discover me dead. This thing called addiction that we battle with every day, situations like that are still not strong enough to get us to stop. That was a big wow moment for me in my life, because that was the first time I got to see my opponent. Addiction is like boxing in the dark, and every now and then you get to see who you're going up against. And that was one of those times, because as remorseful as I felt, it still wasn't enough to get me to stop. And that was June 13th, 2015, 10 years later to the day of my high school graduation. When I graduated high school, I had Layla in my arms. And if you would have asked me what I'd be doing in 10 years, heroin addict would have been the farthest thing. It wouldn't have even been on the spectrum of possibility. And 10 years later to the day, I was dead. I died. And I've heard other addicts talk about OD experiences before, very lackluster, you know. It's always bothered me that I've had a near-death experience like that and didn't see anything. No light at the end of the tunnel. Life didn't flash before my eyes. I just woke up I just woke up, and I think about friends of mine that have died from overdoses, and it's like eternal darkness, you know. I mean, something we can't fathom. Because of that, the doctor I was going to, two things happened. One of the guys that got me into this Suboxone program had gotten busted in a drug bust, which opened up a spot, and the doctor put me in that spot because of my OD. He could see that I was struggling. Once again, the universe works out in my favor. You can't make that up. You can't plan that. You can't write that. So I start getting my own script. And things are going okay. I'm not using anything else. I'm just using my script. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the fact that I have to take this stuff every day to not get dope sick. I wasn't ready to believe that heroin controlled my life like that. I had indulged in something so much where my body hated me when I stopped doing it. Even with alcohol, as much alcohol as I drank, I never suffered withdrawals from not drinking. Anyway, I guess I had distractions at that point in time. I had a new lease on life. And the circumstances too, you know, the officers that were involved, I'm sure did not get Child Protective Services involved because they could see that I was the only addict in my household. I was clearly hiding it from Isaac's mom, and he wasn't in any danger. So they really did us a favor by not getting Child Protective Services involved, because I don't know how I'd feel if one of my drug addict activities got Isaac's mom's son taken away from her. Nobody deserves that. Not a parent that hasn't done anything to deserve that. So once again, I'm fortunate. Let's see, we moved to a new place, and we get a house with a garage, and I changed jobs, and still at this point in time, I had just abstained from drug use. I mean, I was taking my drug replacement medicine, and the Bible study I was going to kind of helped, but there was nothing that I was doing that was really helping me get through not using. I wasn't really maintaining it. It never crossed my mind. Which makes a lot of sense to think that when that urge erupted in me like a volcano, there was nothing there to stop it. At this point in time, I was working at a factory that worked 12-hour days. I got no sleep, and it was just, I could barely take care of myself, so the thought of getting high was a really good idea. And when I did, you know, the more responsibility you have in life, the more likely you're able to destroy everything you've built, which is exactly what I did. The landlords that we had for this house agreed with us to move to move Isaac and his mom into a little basement apartment at another property they owned, so that she could afford the rent, because I had to go to treatment. I had to go to rehab. You know, they say that relapses get worse and worse, and they really do. And they can only get worse if you're progressing in life. You know, I don't think people think about that. Like, the relapses that I've been through were worse because each time I was clean, I progressed. So there was more to mess up when things happen that way. drug use got me back into a state of mind where I knew everything would be taken care of. Really arrogant, you know, like I can go out and throw my life away to drugs because Isaac's mom's gonna be there for him. Now I never got high in front of him, but I was high around him enough. I mean, it really manifested itself in different ways. I mean, the way I was using, I started exploring different places on my body to inject. You know, it's crazy going from one point where you're never going to do a certain drug to being the only person in the room that's doing the drug that way. And the only thing that's giving me the ability to say that I'm functioning is yet again somebody that's holding it down while I'm not. I dove head in. I lost the house. And because of that, the new place that she had gotten, only she was on the lease, so only she got a key. So there were many nights that I was locked out. And I had to sleep in that car, you know. I still have that car too. And you know, I was really so far gone that even the nights that I slept in that car, I was just thinking about when the next time was to use. The rehab facility that I had gotten in touch with gave me a date to be down there 25 days before I had to be down there. And I'd never been so scared in my life. And I told Isaac's mom that too. I said, I just have to stay alive until then because I'm not going to go clean. That was my thinking. She'd say, why don't you sober up? Why would I go to rehab sober? Another justification for me to just flush everything down the drain. And, you know, around Isaac's first birthday, I started looking into a 12-step program. And I would make appearances, and people would have this lingo. They would talk about certain things they do in the program that I didn't understand. And it's really funny how the universe works, because when I finally made it down to treatment, this whole facility was a 12-step program. I had 90 days to learn this stuff in and out. And I knew that nobody would wait for me for another 3 months ever again. I had all the support that I needed and the patience because it was my first time around. Once again in my life, I had the wherewithal of knowing something, you know. And that was another time in my life the universe spoke to me. So I took advantage of it. And I learned everything I could. And one of the most reassuring things in my active drug use was knowing that what I was learning in that treatment facility was here in this city. This is all the stuff that I heard people talk about in these groups, in these meetings. And they gave me the tools that I needed when I got out to seek things like sponsorship. I learned words like recovery. I learned that for some reason, drug use became an intricate part of my life. And in order to not live that way, I have to make an effort to live a different way. It was like an aha moment. It was like, that's what I've been missing all this time. I just stopped doing drugs, or I would just trade one for another. I never worked on being clean. I never tried to get rid of the stuff the guilt that I had built up in my life. The stuff I had went through with my mom's ex-husband as a kid. One of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? One of the most dynamic or I guess, beautiful things I went through in my treatment or in this experience was learning a spot check inventory. You take a situation that's happened in your life, who did it, how it happened, what happened, and how you handled it. You know, who, what, why, and how. And I thought about a situation with my mom's ex-husband, and my counselor looked at me and said, well, what role did you play in it? And I got offended. I said, well, I was a kid at that time. You know, I didn't play no role. He said, how have you let that affect how you've become today? And that's deep. That's very deep, because I let that mold my whole existence. I even drank the same beer that he did. I became somebody that I hated as a child because of what they had done to me. You know what I'm saying? It was just, that's what recovery's done for me. It's able to change your perspective on things we've been through in our lives, you know. If we just look at things in a different perspective, it can be very, very telling. And for me, that's how it was. It made sense. And that's when I also came up with, I said it earlier, I can't be a good parent, as good as I can be, and be a drug addict. So I got to choose, because this back and forth shit is dragging my family through the mud. And so that's what I learned in treatment. And I got out, and a week as I was out, I used. Spirituality is doing the right thing when no one's around. That's the essence of spirituality. That's the glue that holds all of this together. And that was a life lesson right there, because I thought I knew recovery, but I never worked on the spiritual side of it. And the moment no one was looking, I used. Only this time it was different. I felt bad about it. I told on myself. And I still don't know if my sponsor did it on purpose or if it's just the way things worked out. I ended up telling like 200 people that week, because every group I went to, my sponsor would ask me to tell people how my day was. And I knew that he was expecting me to tell them about my hiccup, which helped too. Accountability. I never had to deal with that before, ever. I dealt with worry. I dealt with people being worried about me, but I never dealt with people saying, Adrian, you need to man up to what you've done. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just glad I didn't kill myself. And then another miracle happened upon getting out of treatment. Isaac's mom got pregnant again. And the only thing is, I had done so much damage throughout my drug use that she was to a point in her mind where it was almost impossible for her to see me as a recovering person. So there was a lot of doubt in her mind. And she would say things that were very spiteful, very, you know, we all know that one name you call an intravenous drug user. And you know, in the beginning you think, well, maybe I deserve that. But then it gets to a point after a year where it's just like, you know what I'm saying? But the point is, my children are a reflection of my recovery. When I was healthy enough, I had Isaac. And as soon as I got out of treatment, I had Lukey. That's how I look at my boys nowadays. Which reassures how I felt about Las Vegas. I just wasn't healthy enough. But the damage had been done. And at that point in time, well, Lucas was born 9 months ago. And about 5 months ago, that whole time, me and their mom, we couldn't see eye to eye on certain things, and I understood why. But I also had enough recovery to know that If something's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. And if it was meant to be and it's not meant to be because of something that I did, that's something that I have to live with. So I made a determination to save both of us and save my kids and separate. Even though I think that was a good decision, let's not be blind about this. My drug addiction is the reason why my family's not together today. Had I not driven that much into her mind, then she wouldn't have had to worry about accepting me as a clean person. I'm able to say that nowadays, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's a direct result of me. But what recovery has also taught me is what's done is done. And when it gets to a point where it's starting to be detrimental to your children, you know, you have to make judgment calls. And there has been some positive from that, you know. I mean, I've had my, I had a hiccup. And I'm not trying to downplay it at all. Luckily, in my case, it just didn't manifest itself like it has in the past. Because I simply wouldn't let it. I had to put my tail between my legs and walk back into those rooms and start from day one. And actually, to be specific, wow, 2 months to the day. I'm not ashamed of what I've come through, because I've learned how to adapt. You know, life is so full of questions. I'm trying to teach myself how to think about the facts, you know. It's not about where would I be if I hadn't have gone through this. It's about the facts. I cannot be the best parent I can be and be a drug addict. And in my case, I had the willingness to choose to be a parent. Because one thing is a parent when you become a parent. Play on words. Your life becomes about your children. And even though I've been through crazy obstacles and I have one parent that wasn't around, I had the unconditional love of my mother. And that all shapes all of us, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know, that's what goes through my mind on a daily basis today. I'm here, I'm healthy, I'm happy, and I'm continuously working on myself. Recovery's never over, and my life is nothing but blessings. The universe has shown itself to me. Like I said, religious or not religious, you cannot deny the universe. And I have a gift, and I'm able to see those signs when the universe gives them to me, and I'm very grateful for that. Yeah, I'm grateful to be here, and I love you all, and I pass.